1, her to be a parent, 2, to be a married parent, 3, at the same token, having a husband that's sick, a daughter and a granddaughter that's sick. Think about what her life was like, having to make ends meet as sole provider, picking bushels of green beans. As I looked at this film, I saw her perseverance, because through it all, there were many times when she could have decided, you know what, I'm going to quit. When her daughter died, she could have also chose to quit. When her granddaughter started reacting, she could have chose to quit as well. And just in the course of 53 minutes, of course it was a 5-year time period, her husband dies, her daughter dies. Think about it. AIDS is racking the African American community in large ways. And if we don't find ways to get those resources to areas such as this, where there are not a lot of resources, of course there's not a lot of medical care, the entire group in these rural areas will die out. What are your thoughts on this film? First of all, on Wilhemina herself. This film is really about her as the main character. What are your thoughts on Wilhemina? How is she holding on after all of this?
She's a total inspiration. Total inspiration. And definitely we put our own concerns in check. But it also shouldn't be all that.
She's a survivor. And even though she personally doesn't have AIDS, she's operating in greater ways to bring more resources to her area. Think about the young lady who was in the wheelchair, who had AIDS, but strangely, she's planning her own funeral. Who does that? Who does that? But she's at a funeral repast of a friend of hers, and 10 days later, she dies as well. And you notice you don't see anyone in that particular film, as far as doctors, as far as nurses, who say, we want to live in your area. We want to give you the help that you need, but yet the governor is opposing this.
Mm-hmm. And she's a two-term governor.
Exactly.
I don't want to
Exactly.
Amy's a two-term governor.
Oh yeah.
That's the biggest problem.
When you decide to appeal to status quo, you really don't care about the constituents in your area that you were supposed to serve. That billboard, the first billboard, was real in terms of what's going on in AIDS. The number 1, number 2, number 3, and 4 in that state. And she had it removed. Why? She's not thinking about the constituents. She's thinking about the CEOs who will pass by the rural area.
And I'm not even sure constituents isn't that word, because I don't think they care.
No, they don't. They don't care. And that is why this epidemic moves on. If we don't come and, like you said, have a call to action, if we don't come and say, you know what, this is a real issue, we need to get some help in these areas, it's going to continue. And there are other areas outside of rural that have access to that medical care. But think about it. African Americans. Think about it in the barbershop. When they ask how many people actually use a condom with unprotected sex, how many people actually admitted to it, except the one gentleman. Then when the camera person came back, the other gentleman said that he had had relations with a married woman and it was unprotected. So when myths like this carry on in the Black community, we begin to think we're immune from AIDS, and we're really not. Other thoughts that you have on the movie? Yes?
Has any thought been given to the possibility of doing something through the Clinton Foundation? I know the Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton Foundation, they provide resources for fighting AIDS in Africa, parts of Africa. So I'm wondering, has that been considered? And I know Nikki Haley is a Republican governor, so I don't know if that has something to do with it or not, but that's just a thought.
That's definitely a resource, because we need more resources such as this to continue to get the word out. Yes, sir?
I think Wilhemina made a mistake when she kept her kid out of school because she could not get into school. And it looked like Wilhemina must have been very narrow-minded that she wanted to keep her kid out of school because she had AIDS, but she was doing her more harm, because if she had gone to school, she probably could have got an education, provide for herself. And in the movie said had no record of her going to school,
No record.
or anything of that nature. And it looked like Wilhemina was so stereotyped about AIDS that she wouldn't let her granddaughter go to school.
Maybe she
Because she felt that someone know her granddaughter had AIDS, and it was a poor reflection on herself.
She did say she was scared that they would pick on her and she would be hurt.
Well, I think Wilhemina was more concerned about reflecting on her that she had a daughter with AIDS.
That's possible. Yes.
Well, it goes back to the governor. How can you get resources in when, like you said, the status quo, they really don't care about that population? It's like, well, if they die off, so what? And that's part of the problem is you have people that are comfortable and happy, and let's keep all that in the background. So it's how do you get resources in there when they're actively blocking resources?
Well, the thing is, the people that, of course, fund the governor's campaign, they get to dictate on what you're going to spend the money on. And if AIDS is not top on their list, as far as research and resources, it won't get done.
But going to her point, I think voting is the most important thing, in that the people who have the greatest power and the ones that are voting and hailing in, so somehow the people who have the greatest power need to be touched, need to somehow be sensitized to these stories. And Clinton Foundation, Gates Foundation, foundations are great ideas, but shouldn't society also be responsible so that we get politicians in office that can make?
But it's also the church.
And the church, there's a huge question mark about the church.
Look at the reaction of the black church.
The church.
The Black church has always shied away from HIV and things like that, particularly because of the way it's transmitted.
And I sat through black church sessions where the minister, with my parents in their 80s, spends 10, 15 minutes railing out against gays. And my parents are sitting there listening. And it's,
Not just the South in general,
Yeah.
the church and the way education of sex, don't talk about it, just don't do it. That's not reality. Of course, people are gonna go have sex, and if you're not educating a young person about their body, about sex, about disease, you're just perpetuating more problems. And like you said, education, Wilhemina didn't have an education. Why would she promote her child or her grandchild having an education, which is like, you get by the best way you know how.
she told the minister the data that they reversed. What did the minister do now? What did he do with that? He said, show them the truth.
You didn't want to bother with it. Because if we start talking about helping someone with AIDS, and the rest of the congregation is going to send them to the trash can.
Right. Well, the
People
membership
want to
is
stay
declining.
comfortable, but like the lady said, there's people in those pews that are dying, and they're scared to say something, or they don't even know.
Some of them don't know because they haven't been tested. See, here's the thing about the African American culture. Oftentimes, if we don't see visible effects of it, or I don't look like them, I don't look like what I've seen on the internet, oh, I don't have it. No, you need to get tested every 6 months. Those kits are actually in Walgreens, believe it or not. About $30, you can test yourself at home. But the sad part is, how often do we actually hear that? You won't hear it in the black church, because like you said, don't have sex. And if you do, or if you happen to get pregnant and you're not married, well, now we got another story to talk about. So, how do you turn it around? It comes down to awareness. It comes down to awareness. You don't just talk about sex when your kid is about to have sex. You start that small. How to prevent AIDS, how to prevent STDs, how to prevent pregnancy and you're not prepared. You talk about it. When I came up, my parents talked to me about it. I don't have kids. There's a reason for that. It was preparation. I saw the hardships that my cousins and other relatives went through by being parents and unmarried. Now, that doesn't make me better at all, but I saw their struggles. So it made me want to work harder in school because I didn't want those particular struggles.
Why were you fortunate? Because you had parents in this story.
Sure.
Their mother was an addict. So I don't know the proportion of people in that county that are parentless or their parents are addicts, but then it becomes a community's responsibility. In a sense, the churches or whatever. Because we're fortunate. I don't know how well we can help. Like June. June couldn't help. She leaves.
mean, I guess my question would be in terms of parental. The strange part of the film was, why do we see Dayshell's dad show at the end of the film?
I was wondering.
Where has he been at the beginning of the film? Where has he been during her life? Because last I'm hearing, Wilhemina takes care of her. So what is he actually contributing, especially with him being a person living with AIDS as well? Exactly. Every time she has a breakdown, every time she has a low moment, she breaks up with her girlfriend, who does she lean on? Grandma. Where was he? He's at the parade. Or where was he throughout the rest of her life when she was there? Could have been anywhere. Other comments on the film? We're talking about Wilhelmina's War, and this is the story of a grandmother who's taking care of her daughter and granddaughter who are living with AIDS.
I didn't see the film, but I found it very interesting discussion. Obviously, this is the topic.
Sure.
And having spent my whole life in the black church, I don't think that subject, homosexuality,